It was a sunny evening in downtown Arlington, and people were rushing in and out of cafes and stores along the busy streets, which were alive with activity and conversation. Wearing a basic gray t-shirt, well-fitting pants, and shoes, Elijah Grant, a distinguished Navy SEAL on leave, walked idly along the sidewalk. He put a messenger bag made of leather over his shoulder. Elijah had been intending to read a novel and was on his way to a nearby bookshop to get one. His mind was at ease for the first time in months. Elijah was about to cross an intersection when he heard the distinctive sound of a police cruiser approaching. The automobile came to a stop with a slight squeal from the tires. Officer Cardin, a white policeman, approached Elijah slowly and deliberately, his blue eyes searching him like a hawk assessing its prey. "Hey, you!" Cardin's voice broke over the din of the street as he growled. Elijah stopped in the middle of his stride and looked up at the officer. "You're in a bit of a hurry, aren't you?" Cardin went on, his voice brimming with unjustified mistrust. "Mind telling me where you're headed?" Sharp and accusing, the question lingered in the air. Elijah did not panic. Sensing tension, some people slowed, while others kept moving on, as if they were accustomed to such situations. Elijah's countenance was inscrutable as he cocked his head. "Evenly, just heading to the bookstore," he said. With a sneer twisting his lips, Cardin folded his arms. "A bookstore, eh? What's in that bag of yours? Are you carrying anything that I should be aware of?" The connotation was obvious. The weight of the looks around him was felt by Elijah. He was well aware of the bias in the officer's remarks, yet Elijah's eyes glittered with quiet confidence rather than rage or fury. "You want to check?" Elijah questioned in a calm, even demanding voice. Cardin stood up straight, obviously unprepared for that reaction. "I'll be the one asking questions," he yelled. The officer's fingers lingered close to his utility belt, and there was a moment of stillness. As more individuals stopped, phones slipping out of pockets, the crowd gradually became thicker. Still at ease, Elijah moved his weight a little, but Cardin hesitated for some reason. Elijah said, "All right, officer," in the same composed voice. "Let's do this the right way." The crackling tension in the air roused the curiosity of the expanding gathering, which whispered. Cardin felt unnerved by Elijah's poise, which seemed unfazed by the officer's implicit threat. With his boots making a slight clinking sound across the pavement, the cop straightened his shoulders and took a step closer. Cardin said, "Drop the bag," in a harsher tone now, as though speaking louder might conceal his hesitancy. Elijah stood motionless, his face inscrutable. After a while, he responded, "Sure," taking the bag off his shoulder with care and handing it out. His composure was a tactic, not a sign of surrender. Elijah's eyes stayed on Cardin as he grabbed the bag. Those black eyes were filled with a silent force that seemed to frighten the officer much more than fear. Cardin said, "Hands behind your back," and grabbed his belt's shackles. Elijah arched an eyebrow at this. His voice was firm and unwavering as he inquired, "Am I under arrest?" With a quick reply, "You're being detained," Cardin sidestepped the straight question. "You fit the description of someone we're looking for." Like a horrible joke, the statement's ridiculousness lingered in the air. The audience exchanged disbelieving glances, and a lady with a phone said, "Here we go again." Elijah nodded slowly, a little, hardly noticeable smile curling his lips. He responded, "All right, Officer Cardin, let me help you out," taking a step closer while maintaining a measured gait. Cardin's palm hovered close to his holstered firearm as he tensed. "Stay right there." Elijah paused and lifted his hands a little. "Relax, I'm just giving you my ID." Slowly, he retrieved a small, elegant card holder from his back pocket. He took his military ID out of it and gave it to them. Cardin looked down at the card and paused. As his gaze swept over the name, rank, and phrases United States Navy SEAL engraved on the ID, his smile momentarily wavered. "You still think I fit the description?" Elijah inquired, sounding as composed as usual but with a hint of humor. Sensing the change, the audience leaned closer. There was a flutter of expectation in the air as phones began to record freely. Cardin tightened his jaw and threw the ID back to Elijah, evidently irritated. He whispered, "This doesn't mean you're above suspicion. Stay put while I check your bag." Elijah had a little smile on his lips as he crossed his arms. The expression in his eyes said louder than words could. "Go ahead and make an effort to learn more. From this hole." Elijah stepped back a little as Cardin unzipped the bag and started searching through its contents. His cool manner was now tinged with a subdued assurance that was almost dramatic. "Make sure to show everyone what you find," Elijah urged, pointing to the expanding group of people. As Cardin knelt down a little and unzipped Elijah's leather messenger bag, the tension in the air was nearly tangible. Like paparazzi spotting a scandal, the throng leaned in, their phones focused on the action. Elijah's bag was filled with neat items that appeared to have been placed there with military accuracy. A sleek black laptop, a stainless steel water bottle, and a nicely folded book were seated next to each other. After a brief pause, Carden touched the book with his fingertips and took it out. "What's this?" Carden held up the book as if it were illegal and demanded. Across the front was the title, Leadership Under Pressure, A SEAL's Guide to Resilience and Excellence. Carden could not see the irony, but the muttering audience did. Elijah's expression remained composed. "That's a book I wrote," he answered calmly, his words tinged with the tiniest hint of laughter. Carden blinked, startled briefly. As if it were inconceivable, he repeated, "You wrote this?" Elijah remarked, "That's what I said," with a small head twist. "You want me to autograph it for you, or are you just planning to keep rummaging through my things?" The crowd erupted in laughter, and Carden's face became scarlet. Evidently attempting to take control of the situation, he pushed the book back into the bag with more force than was required. He yelled, "Cut the attitude," in a more defensive tone. "This isn't over." Elijah held up his hands as if in a sign of submission. He added, "Hey, you're the one making a scene," in a cool tone that betrayed that he wasn't scared. "I'm just trying to go about my day." Ignoring the remark, Carden went on. He dug through the bag, took out the laptop next, and examined it as though he could discover something that would implicate him. When that didn't work, he put it down and went on to the final item, a tiny diary encased in leather. Carden opened it and narrowed his eyes as he turned the pages. The diary contained Elijah's views and experiences from postings abroad in crisp, accurate handwriting. Carden was drawn to one specific entry: "You don't fight for recognition. You fight because it's morally correct." Being a leader is not about having power. It has to do with service. The comments obviously resonated on a level that Carden wasn't yet ready to acknowledge, and he froze for a time. Meanwhile, the throng started to become increasingly agitated. "Anything illegal in there, officer?" Elijah inquired in a courteous but subtly challenging tone. With his annoyance clearly visible on his face, Carden slammed the diary closed and stuffed it back into the bag. "You're free to go," he said, taking a step back as if to recover control. Elijah remained still. Rather, he raised an eyebrow and crossed his arms. He responded, "Not so fast," in a quiet but firm voice. "In front of everyone, you stopped me, accused me of fitting a description, and went through my personal items. I believe we should be given an explanation." Voices shouting out, "What's the reason? And you can't just walk away from this," caused the audience to roar in accord. Owners of phones were now aiming them straight at Carden, anticipating his next action. Carden shuffled uneasily, his prior confidence crumbling beneath the observation of the throng. Elijah remained erect, composed, and uncompromising. The officer could not dismiss this from his very presence. Carden looked around at the throng, his expression a combination of annoyance and discomfort. The air surrounding him seemed to be becoming smaller due to the overwhelming volume of phones that were filming everything he did. His former self-assurance had vanished, replaced by an increasing awareness that he was now being watched. The stillness between them stretched out like a challenge as Elijah and Carden locked eyes. "You're not going to answer?" Elijah inquired, his tone easily rising over the mutter of the audience. "What's this description I supposedly fit?" Carden parted his lips but kept them shut. Everyone watching could see the apparent truth: there had never been a description, only an excuse. "Let me guess," Elijah said, his voice still soothing but suddenly somewhat abrasive. "A black man going about his business while strolling down the street. That's pretty much it, isn't it?" The suspense increased with each second as the audience burst into a combination of gasps and whispers. Carden's jaw tightened as he searched for an answer. Elijah wasn't done, though. "You see, officer," Elijah continued, advancing a step, "it wasn't about maintaining street safety what you just did. It has to do with power. You believe that by intimidating and humiliating me, you might maybe make this worse. However, you weren't expecting me to remain composed, were you?" Carden's cheeks reddened, but he said nothing. Elijah went on, "You didn't expect me to be a Navy SEAL," in a firm yet sharp voice. "You didn't expect me to have the discipline to stay level-headed or the experience to see through your game." The audience listened intently to every word, with some nodding in agreement and others quietly cheering. Elijah swiveled to speak to the expanding crowd. He stated, "This isn't just about me," with a tone of subdued power. "It's about the countless times this happens to people who don't have a camera. It's unfair to watch those who lack the resources or authority to fight back. It must end because it is harassment." In response, the audience cheered and raised their voices. Now clearly shaken, Carden attempted to interrupt. With all of his former confidence gone, he stumbled, I was just doing my job." Elijah faced him once again, a look of subdued disappointment on his face. He replied plainly, "Maybe you're not cut out for it if this is how you define your job." The audience yelled in accord as the words struck Carden like a slap. People started yelling things like, "File a complaint," and "Hold him accountable." Carden glanced around, the tide of public opinion eroding his power. Elijah produced his phone from his pocket and held it up. He responded, "Here's the deal, officer. You're going to explain why you stopped me, or, in front of everyone's eyes." As he touched the screen of his phone, he allowed the inference to linger. Carden became aware that Elijah had been filming the whole exchange, and his eyes grew wide. The officer's lips opened, but nothing came out. With a voice that broke through the confusion, Elijah emphasized, "You don't owe me an apology. You should explain to everyone present why you believed you might misuse your position of authority. So feel free to speak." As they awaited Carden's answer, the audience became quiet. The officer had lost all of his previous cockiness, and his face was suddenly pallid. He stood up and shuffled, obviously in a panic due to the pressure of the situation. Officer Carden felt the weight of the situation like a storm cloud, and his uneasiness was heightened by the expectant hush of the throng. As he looked for a way out of the corner he had backed himself into, beads of sweat appeared on his brow. With a stutter, Carden looked from Elijah to the sea of recording phones. "I was behaving suspiciously. I'm just attempting to protect public safety and fulfilling my duties." The crowd moaned as the weak justification sparked cries of annoyance and incredulity. "Same old story," said a man at the front, shaking his head. A female voice said, "What suspicion? Simply put, say it." Elijah's face remained the same, but he appeared to become more authoritative. He moved closer with purpose, his cool eyes meeting Carden's agitated face. "Conspiration?" Elijah repeated, he said, his voice piercing the cacophony like a razor. "Officer, let me clarify this. Being suspected is not an excuse for harassment. It's not a reason to stop someone without a reason, and it's definitely not a reason to single someone out based on their skin tone." Carden was about to reply when Elijah held out a hand to cut him off. The calm authority was met with a gentle cheer from the crowd. "You want to talk about suspicion?" Elijah went on, his tone sharpening and his voice raising a little. "What about the fact that you didn't inquire about the destination of any other person on this street? What about the fact that, without any proof, you picked me out, searched through my possessions, and attempted to portray me as a threat?" Elijah's remarks were so intense that Carden's cheeks flushed and his calmness broke. He stammered, I wasn't singling you out," but his tone was unconvinced. "Weren't you?" Elijah retorted, his cool expression now laced with furious outrage. "Because it appears that no one else is being stopped here. Or will you inform everyone that they all suit the nebulous description you provided?" The audience erupted in cheers, with some yelling, "We see right through you. And answer him." Carden's previous cockiness had been totally replaced by desperation, and he appeared to be a cornered animal. He looked at the audience, at the phones that were recording everything he did, and then back at Elijah, who was standing erect and uncompromising. Elijah's tone softened but did not lose its force when he dropped his voice. "Officer Carden, this is the reality. You weren't prepared for my pushback. You've probably done this more times than you can remember, so you assumed you could get away with it. Not today, though. You chose the wrong person today.